Another therapy session on reality. Welcome to my channel. Hope that God is keeping you safe and healthy during this season. And I have been speaking on the Black condition in America, the importance of elevating our knowledge and consciousness as a Black community, and the impact this has on our self-esteem, self-confidence, and courage, navigating these very perilous times. This video, Black History, a Knowledge and Behavioral Modifier. What you will get out of this. This work stands on the shoulders of leadership, legacies, and sacrifices of the elders in our community. None of these, I own no rights to any of this information. If anything, I'm honored and blessed to be able to even have the opportunity to study these great leaders. I'm just going to tap on a small percentage of individuals who I have been tapping into their frequency and their energy in my studies on Black history and the Black condition. Currently reading Defining Moments in Black History from Brother Dick Gregory, A Black Theology of Liberation by James H. Cone, Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman, Knowing God, J.J. Packer, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, The ISIS Papers, Francis Cress Welsing, amazing reads so far. Very honored. And also The Hidden Identity of Blacks in the Bible, Jeremiah Jael Israel. What you'll get out of this message, this fuel as a Black American around the importance of staying in the knowledge of our Black history here and the leaders who sacrificed and showed just tremendous courage to elevate the Black condition despite odds, despite sacrificing their lives. So I have some research tying some of the information that I've learned together for you so that it's convenient whenever you just need a little bit of a power up. Salute to all the YouTube channels out there who are doing this work as we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors and our elders. So let's kind of get right into it. America is a slow burn for change, especially if you're Black, because this country was never designed to change quickly for us. It was built on ideals it didn't intend to fully honor. And every time Black Americans have demanded that the nation live up to its own words, resistance followed. Freedom came with conditions. Progress came with pushback. And every step forward was met with a system asking, how can we give just enough to quiet you, but not enough to disrupt power? For Black Americans, that's why it often feels like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Slavery ended, but Black codes replaced it. Segregation ended, but mass incarceration took its place. Voting rights expanded, then voter suppression evolved. Change didn't stop. It shapeshifted. And when you're constantly fighting a system that adapts to preserve itself, progress starts to feel exhausting. instead of victorious. That cycle creates a deep spirit of disappointment and discouragement in the Black community. Not because we didn't try, but because we tried everything. We organized, we marched, we prayed, we voted, we litigated, we died, and still faced resistance from government institutions, law enforcement, and often unified white communities determined to maintain control. When sacrifice is met with hostility instead of justice, hope becomes cautious. You start guarding your expectations just to survive emotionally. And the work gets even harder when Black youth disconnect from their history, when they go silent, opt out, or reject the stories of those who fought and died so we can have choices. Without history, today's struggles feel random, personal, meaningless. You don't see the pattern, so you blame yourself or your community instead of the system that's been resisting you for generations. When young people don't know the lineage, the burden feels heavier than it actually is. It feels like you're starting everything from zero. You're not recognizing and embracing the legacies and the work that was done from your elders, from the ancestors. As a young person, you're looking at it like, oh, we got to start all of this stuff from ground zero. We got to start all the way over. No, you don't have to start over. There was work done, and that continues to be done. But when you're disconnected from your history, you're that young Black person that's like, oh, we got to start from ground zero. I ain't got time for that. Right. That isolation can breed frustration, internal conflict, and self sabotage. Not because Black youth are weak, you're not weak, but because you're carrying pain without context. History isn't just information, it's orientation. It tells you where you are and why the road feels so steep. But history also tells us something else. Progress has never required everyone. It has always required someone willing to remember, show up, and carry the work forward. When Black youth reconnect to that legacy, disappointment turns into discernment. Discouragement turns into responsibility. The work doesn't get easier, but it becomes purposeful. And purpose is what keeps a people standing, even when the fire burns slow. So, this is for you younger people, you younger folks out there, you Black Americans that get discouraged, you lose hope, you feel like everything has to start from ground zero. When in reality, the work that our elders, our ancestors, and pioneers in the African American community have done are the foundation that we are blessed and honored to build from. We're not just starting over from ground zero. How do we know, as a young African American, when you've studied the history, you've done the research, how does it show up? How does this knowledge express itself in your behavior? Is there a difference? Do you just do all this reading and all this studying and it's just another day of human existence? Is there not indicators that show you are doing the research, learning your history? Why it's important for African American youth to study their history. History restores identity before behavior. When African American youth study their history, they learn that their identity did not begin in trauma, crime statistics, or deficiency narratives. It began in resistance, intellect, faith, strategy, and moral courage. Knowing this interrupts internalized inferiority and replaces it with a grounded sense of worth. Behavior flows from your identity. When identity is restored, behavior stabilizes. History explains pain without normalizing destruction. Understanding historical oppression helps youth contextualize their anger, mistrust, and hypervigilance without turning those emotions inward and against each other, against your brother. History teaches that many present struggles are responses to systems, not personal or cultural failures. This reduces self hatred and lateral violence within the community. History teaches discipline, not just defiance. Figures like the Greensboro Four and Jimmy Lee Jackson show that change required restraint, courage, and moral discipline, not chaos. Studying these lives reframes strength as self control, strategic thinking, and sacrifice. This challenges modern distortions of masculinity and power rooted in impulsivity and dominance. History creates collective responsibility. Learning your history moves the Black youth from an isolated me versus the world kind of mindset to a collective we survived together framework. It teaches that progress came when Black communities protected one another, organized together, and refused to abandon the vulnerable. This strengthens community accountability and mutual care. History anchors your spirit. For many African American youth, history is inseparable from faith, spirituality, and moral grounding. Understanding the role of the Black church, nonviolent resistance, and moral conviction shows that survival was not accidental, it was spiritually sustained. This provides a deeper sense of purpose beyond survival. Implications that the study of your history of knowledge, right? The Bible says people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, but implications of the study of this history on your behavior and your community attitudes. Well, you have reduced self sabotage. Youth who understand history are less likely to unconsciously destroy themselves or others because they recognize how often destruction was extremely imposed, not internally chosen. Increase emotional regulation. Historical awareness creates patience. It teaches that long term change requires endurance, not immediate retaliation. This leads to fewer reactive behaviors, that impulsivity, and more intentional living. Greater respect for elders and legacy. Studying history increases reverence for those who endured so much so future generations could have choices. This often shows up as increased respect for parents, grandparents, and community elders. Stronger in group empathy. Youth who know their history are less likely to shame, ridicule, or dehumanize other Black people. They recognize shared wounds and shared resilience, reducing internalized racism and competition. So you start to show more self-respect without, you know, arrogance, and you express anger with clarity, not chaos. You understand the difference between systemic barriers and personal responsibility. You value education as a tool, not a punishment. You protect Black dignity in speech, behavior, online presence. You reject narratives that pit Black men and women against each other. Demonstrate patience, discipline, and moral respect and moral restraint. You feel connected to something larger than yourself. Indicators you haven't integrated the knowledge or studied the knowledge. Chronic self hatred or internalized racism, glorification of self destructive behaviors, mocking or dismissing Black suffering as weakness, turning anger primarily on other Black people, viewing education as selling out or betrayal, hyper individualism disconnected from the community, confusing aggression with strength, lack of purpose beyond survival or status. Makes a big, huge difference. Learning your history, big difference. So it says here the modern civil rights movement did not emerge from a single moment or a leader. It arose from a chain of coordinated resistance, personal sacrifice, youth activism, and strategic confrontation with systems designed to deny Black Americans full citizenship. Figures like Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Dorothy Height, the Greensboro Four, and Jimmy Lee Jackson represent different roles within the same struggle: legislative power, organizational leadership, student activism, and martyrdom, each reinforcing the other. These leaders came from different regions, generations, and social positions, yet all confronted Jim Crow segregation, voter suppression, and racial terror through distinct but interconnected methods. Some challenged injustice from within Congress, others organized behind the scenes, while students and ordinary citizens placed their bodies directly in harm's way. Their combined efforts reveal how systemic change requires pressure from every direction. Violence was not accidental to this era, it was a deliberate response to Black advancement. When peaceful protests threatened entrenched power, darkness, clubs, bullets, and intimidation were used as tools of control. The killing of Jimmy Lee Jackson in Marion, Alabama, and the subsequent terror surrounding his death exposed the true cost of demanding democracy in the Deep South. What followed was not retreat, but escalation. Grief became strategy. The Selma to Montgomery marches were not spontaneous acts of courage, they were calculated moral confrontations born directly from bloodshed, denial of medical care, and the desecration of Black dignity, even in death. The movement understood that exposure was necessary to force federal action. Together, these individuals and events form a continuous historical line. Ideas translated into action. Action met with violence. Violence exposed nationally, and exposure converted into law. This lesson traces that line fully, its origins, actions, consequences, and legacies, without sanitizing the cost. 15 key historical points. Adam Clayton Powell Jr., his origins and rise. Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was born in 1908 in New Haven, Connecticut, the son of a powerful Harlem pastor. Raised in a politically aware, racially conscious environment, Powell learned early that the Black church could both be a spiritual and political force. He became deeply influenced by Harlem's struggle with segregation, housing discrimination, and labor inequality. As a U.S. congressman from Harlem, Powell mastered the use of legislative leverage. He authored and pushed amendments that prohibited federal funding to schools and institutions that practiced segregation, quietly forcing integration through economic pressure. His behind the scenes work reshaped policy long before public sentiment caught up. Powell did not die violently. He died in 1972 from natural causes. Yet his political career was aggressively attacked because he wielded power effectively. His legacy shows that systemic racism also targets Black authority through ethics, investigations, media framing, and institutional removal when violence is no longer acceptable. Dorothy Height. Dorothy Height was born in 1912 in Richmond, Virginia, excelling academically despite racial barriers. She emerged as a leader who refused to separate racial justice from women's rights, understanding that Black women were routinely erased within both movements. As a president of the National Council of Negro Women, Height worked alongside Martin Luther King Jr., A. Philip Randolph, and Bayard Rustin. Though excluded from speaking at the 1963 March on Washington, she was instrumental in organizing it, demonstrating how Black women sustain movements without recognition. Dorothy Height lived to see her work recognized, receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom and Congressional Gold Medal. Her life shows that survival itself can be resistance when institutions attempt to marginalize leadership through silence rather than force. The Greensboro Four, Isaiah Blair Jr., so like Jabril Kazan, Franklin McCain, Joseph McNeil, and David Richmond were freshmen at North Carolina A&T State University. They were not seasoned activists. They were students frustrated by the daily humiliation of segregation. On February 1st, 1960, they sat at a whites-only Woolworth's lunch counter and refused to leave. Their calm defiance sparked sit-ins across the South, proving that youth-led nonviolent disruption could dismantle everyday segregation. Nonviolence was a very important tool. Mahatma Gandhi made a very big influence on civil rights strategy, and nonviolence was a brilliant rebuttal and counter to the violence that was expressed and put against a lot of the civil rights movement in African Americans who were trying to fight for equal rights. You're seeing a lot of these children, these younger people and adults being beaten to the point of even death. And it tapped into something in the American spirit of just individuals who were losing their lives over something that was out of their control. We can't control our race. We can't control what color of our skin we're going to wear when we enter this human experiment. And I believe for the American community to witness and observe individuals, human beings who were getting beaten to the point of potentially losing their lives over a right to just eat at the same lunch table really sparked something in the American consciousness. And this is something that I believe as a Black youth, we could very much benefit from today. The spirit of nonviolence. Everybody has guns. Everybody got their finger on the trigger. And I can't be your judge. If that's how you want to live, who am I to say anything? I walked around with an M4 for almost 2 years in Iraq. So what can I say about African Americans who want to bear their right to protect themselves and to carry weapons? But for me, what discouraged me from owning a rifle or owning a weapon is the most powerful weapon as a Black man that I could possibly have is the weapon of my mind, of my thoughts, the power of my speech, and my influence. Having a gun you got some power. You walk around with an AK or M4 or things like that, people get intimidated. People get, but the most long lasting and effective power that produces effective change, if done correctly, is influence. Your ability to utilize your voice, your impact in a way that allows others to receive it with the greater likelihood of defense or less defense, because you're not carrying something that can take a person's life. You're just carrying the weapon of your mind, which everything is up to interpretation. But I believe the spirit of nonviolence was a brilliant approach. I just wanted to give the flowers to our ancestors and our elders who just tapped in to that divine power and just how much of an impact it made for us younger people today. The Greensboro Four, Dorothy Height, studying Dick Gregory, brilliant mind. I love Dick Gregory. I loved him when he was alive. I was just binged on his videos. I just love when he speaks. I bought a couple of his books, learning a lot from him on figures in Black history I didn't know anything about. Dorothy Height, a great debater, a brilliant intellect, a brilliant mind, who, as a woman, had to face even gender barriers from her own people. Okay. And did not let that stop her from being a powerful force in the community and for her people. Adam Clayton Powell, also a brilliant mind, African American young man using the power of legislator, laws, influence, unapologetically Black, pro civil rights to make a difference on all levels. Didn't even know who this man was. Again, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Thank you, Dorothy Height. Thank you, the Greensboro Four, the African Americans who participated in the sit ins. Thank you all for the work that you've done, the sacrifices that you've made. Their actions help give rise to SNCC and normalize direct action as a tactic. None of the Greensboro Four were killed, but they permanently altered how resistance would be organized through visibility, discipline, and mass participation. Jimmy Lee Jackson, born in 1938, Marion, Alabama, a young deacon committed to faith and justice. Unlike national leaders, he represented everyday Black citizens, risking their lives simply to vote. On February 18, 1965, during a peaceful protest, the street lights were deliberately turned off. These folks, these white folks, those white identity extremists were so evil. They seen that those peaceful protesters and cut all the street lights out. Okay, now you're walking in the street in the dark. Trolls come out with their clubs, beating the protesters down. They're out there peacefully protesting. February 18th, 1965, during a peaceful protest, streetlights were deliberately turned off in Black neighborhoods. Troopers used clubs to beat the demonstrators, beating them down. Didn't even know about this. Marion, Alabama. Mr. Jackson fled into Mac's Cafe. His grandfather's getting beat down by a club. Mother stepped in and tried to prevent the beating. She gets beat down. Where troopers followed and beat his grandfather. Turned on her, beating her down. Inside the cafe, state trooper James Bernard Fowler shot Jimmy Lee Jackson multiple times. Brother Dick Gregory says about 5 times in the stomach at close range. Brother was unarmed. Dragged him away, locked him up. Received no medical care directly to the wound injuries to his stomach. Let's lock this nigga up. To hell with the gunshot wounds to his gut, to his belly. Let the man sit there and die a slow, painful death. Can you imagine? You're out there peacefully protesting for equal rights, civil rights. Lights get turned off. They're beating you down, beating your grandparents down, your family down. You go to defend them. You get shot in your gut, thrown into jail. And you got to sit with that pain. At close range. He was not taken into the hospital until the next day. So you're sitting there in a cell. You're mentally fucked up. of what just happened, what you observed on top of everything else. And now you're sitting here with these. I mean, I just can only imagine what Jimmy Lee Jackson had to suffer being shot in his stomach 5 times, and you're sitting in that cell, and you just know that the death is coming. That pain in your gut. If I eat a bad meal, I feel like I'm about to pass out. You get shot in your gut 5 times. To hell with him. Let's just leave him there. Let him die. Jimmy Lee Jackson was not taken to the hospital until the next day. Oh, okay, now you can go. Now we'll take you to the hospital. Go ahead, get you some wound care, whatever, nigga. Let that man die. And the delay worsened his injuries. He died 8 days later on February 26, 1965. Jimmy Lee Jackson's death was a direct catalyst for the Selma to Montgomery marches. The movement understood that Marion exposed what voter suppression truly meant: lethal enforcement. Selma was chosen because only about 2% of Black residents were registered to vote. Bloody Sunday, March 7, 1965, marchers were brutally attacked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Televised violence confirmed everything Jackson's death had revealed. The brutality forced federal intervention and accelerated passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So it wasn't just for voting rights alone that they marched on Selma. It's because his brother got murdered the way he did. Okay. During the Selma campaign, they're out there marching for the brother who just lost his life to 5 gunshot wounds to the gut, just protecting his family, marching peacefully. All this strategy and strategic implementation, these white identity extremists gathering around, just devils. The truth will make you free. Don't forget that. These white identity extremist devils cut the streetlights out. They're out there peacefully protesting. We're going to come out there with clubs and beat them down. They get together, organize, march at Selma. Black people are not going to give up. We're not going to fold. This is the history you younger African Americans need to know. You need to know the sacrifices, the bullets, the pain that was given for you. For you. You go off killing each other. You go out and kill your brother, but you forget about the sacrifices, the losses our elders had to take. Just doing the right thing. So they're marching in Selma. You have troopers. This is from Brother Dick Gregory. They're sitting outside the gravesite of Jimmy Lee Jackson, shooting at the brother's tombstone. If it's not enough, he died. Gunshot wounds to the gut. No medical care. Left the man there to rot. He's transitioned. The troopers are shooting at his tombstone. During the Selma campaign, gunfire was directed at Jimmy Lee Jackson's tombstone. This was psychological terror, sending a message that even in death, black resistance would be punished. It backfired, hardening resolve and exposing the depth of racial hatred and operating without accountability. If you really think about racism, and I love Dick Gregory because sometimes he speaks a lot of thoughts that just I think about, but he kind of puts a voice to it. Racism is such a foolish thing to be that hateful towards people of color, African Americans, just because of the color of their skin. Nothing else. Just because of how you look. Like you had control over that. Such a foolish thing. And to be so enraged. Can you imagine? Ignorance is so angry. Foolishness is rage. I believe that. If foolishness had an emotion and ignorance had an emotion attached to it, it would be rage. Pay attention to your anger, black folks, you younger black people. Don't adopt the emotion of the foolish, of the ignorant. Study your history. And a lot of you are studying your history. You know what's going on. And salute to you, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., the Greensboro Four, Dorothy Height, Jabril Kazan, Franklin McCain, Joseph McNeil, David Richmond, Jimmy Lee Jackson, Dick Gregory, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, man, Francis Cress Wilson, Jeremiah Jael Israel, Howard Thurman, James H. Cone. I've just been in this spiritually transformative state. I feel like my spirit and my soul is going through an evolution in this season. I'm not getting caught up with the jingle bells. I'm not getting caught up in the bells and the whistles. Really tapping into this thing called Black history. What this means for us as a Black youth today, moving forward, for my kids, for your kids. Praying that this message reaches who it's supposed to reach, and that you feel a spark and a fire to tap into your ancestry, the work of the elders on whose shoulders we stand on. Thankful to them, thankful for you, have hope in you, I have faith in you, that we can continue this beautiful legacy of elevating the condition of our people. I'm out.